What if I told you that the very foundations of how you see the world, what you think is real, true, logical, are full of holes, and not just tiny cracks, but massive canyons, spotted thousands of years ago by thinkers brave enough to poke at the very fabric of existence? Imagine your brain as this super slick processor running the software we call reality. Now picture ancient philosophers as cosmic hackers. They cooked up these elegant lines of code, disguised as puzzles and paradoxes, so powerful they can make your mental operating system totally stutter, lag, and just flash a big fat error message. Does not compute. These aren't just clever riddles, folks. They're conceptual depth charges, designed to blow our most basic assumptions sky high. It's like they found the master control panel for our thoughts and started flipping switches just to see what would happen. Get ready to have your cognitive circuits well and truly fried as we dive into ancient puzzles that suggest reality itself might just be, well, a bit of a glitch. So when we say reality is a glitch, what are we actually getting at? We're not necessarily saying you're living in a computer simulation, Neo style, or at least not just that. The glitches we're about to explore are much more fundamental. They're those head-scratching moments where our perception, our language, and our logic just completely break down when faced with certain scenarios. Like when your Wi-Fi signal drops right at the climax of a movie. These are the paradoxes that have kept philosophers, mathematicians, and mystics up at night for centuries, revealing just how surprisingly shaky the concepts we take for granted really are. Think about it. Your brain builds your reality from the data it gets and the logical rules it uses. But what if those rules have built-in contradictions? Like a recipe that tells you to add sugar, and in the next line says never add sugar. What if the very words we use to describe the world are inherently slippery, like trying to grab a fistful of water, always able to tie themselves into impossible knots? These ancient puzzles aren't just dusty old curiosities. They're like active fault lines under our understanding. They highlight exactly where the map in our head doesn't quite match the territory of existence. Each one is a tiny, nagging anomaly, a flicker in the matrix, hinting that our grip on what is far more shaky, far more open to weird interpretations than we comfortably admit. These aren't just brain teasers, they're philosophical dynamite, and the fuse was lit a long, long time ago. Things are about to get wonderfully weird. All right, our first stop on this mind-bending tour takes us to the ancient docks of Athens, a bustling hub of trade, philosophical showdowns, and epic stories. One such story, passed down by the historian Plutarch, is about the legendary hero Theseus. The myth goes that Theseus sailed to Crete, took down the Minotaur, and returned to Athens a hero. His ship became a super treasured relic. The Athenians, bursting with pride over this symbol of their heritage, decided to preserve the ship of Theseus for everyone to see, for ages to come. As years rolled into decades and decades into centuries, the ship's wooden planks started to rot. To keep it looking sharp, they meticulously removed the decaying planks, one by one, and replaced them with new identical bits of timber. This went on for a very long time, until eventually every single original piece of the ship of Theseus, every plank, every oar, every nail, had been swapped out. Now here's the brain-busting question that bounced around the philosophical schools of ancient Greece and still messes with our heads today. Is the restored ship, now made entirely of new materials, still the ship of Theseus? Just pause for a second. What's your gut feeling? Many would say, yeah, of course it is. It looks the same. It's in the same spot in the harbor. It's got the same name and history. It's kept its form and function. Aristotle might have chimed in that its formal cause, its design and essence, kind of like how your favorite baseball team is still your favorite team, even when all the players change over the years because the name, colors, and spirit remain, is the same. So, yep, same ship. But others would shout, no way! Not a single original bit remains. It's a totally different pile of atoms. It's a replica, a fancy copy, no matter how well it's made. They'd argue that identity is all about the physical stuff, and the plot thickens. The philosopher Thomas Hobbes, centuries later, tossed another grenade into the discussion. What if someone had been collecting all the original discarded planks as they were replaced? And what if, once all those old planks were gathered, they were used to build another ship, put together in the exact same way as the original? Now you've got two ships. Which one, if either, is the real ship of Theseus? Is it the one in the harbor, perfectly maintained but with all new parts? Or is it the reassembled one, made of all the original bits, but now a totally separate thing? This isn't just about old boats, people. The ship of Theseus paradox rips into the very definition of identity over time. Think about your own body. Most of your cells get replaced every 7 to 10 years. Are you the same person you were a decade ago? You've got the same name, mostly the same memories, and this continuous stream of being you. But physically, you're almost entirely new stuff. What makes you you? Is it your physical matter, your pattern, your memories, or something else entirely? The ship of Theseus shows us a massive glitch in how we think about identity for anything that changes, which, let's be honest, is everything. Our language and logic crave clear labels. This is the ship, this is not the ship. But reality, always changing, seems to work on a spectrum where these neat boxes just fall apart, like trying to pinpoint the exact moment day becomes night. It's a gradual fade, not a switch. There's no single agreed-upon moment when the ship stops being itself. Its isness gets fuzzy, ambiguous, like an out-of-focus photograph. It's like our whole idea of lasting identity is a handy illusion, a story we tell ourselves to make sense of a universe that's basically just one relentless process of transformation. This ancient puzzle makes us face the uncomfortable truth that the solid, definable things we see might be more like patterns in a river, always changing, yet keeping a recognizable shape. It's a fundamental crack in our understanding of what it means for something or someone to simply be. Next up, we're zipping over to the ancient Greek colony of Elea in southern Italy, home to the philosopher Zeno, back in the 5th century BCE. Zeno wasn't just trying to be a smarty pants at philosophical dinner parties. He was defending his teacher Parmenides' pretty wild idea that reality is a single, unchanging, motionless thing. To do this, Zeno unleashed a series of paradoxes so sneaky they seem to prove that motion, something we experience every single second, is logically impossible. Let's take his most famous one, Achilles and the tortoise. Achilles, the super swift hero from Greek myths, gets challenged to a race by a slow and steady tortoise. Being a good sport, Achilles gives the tortoise a head start, say 100 meters. The race kicks off. Now, Zeno argues, for Achilles to catch up to the tortoise, he first has to reach the spot where the tortoise started, 100 meters ahead. Makes sense, right? But by the time Achilles hits that 100-meter mark, the tortoise, slow as it is, will have plodded a little further ahead, maybe 10 meters. Okay, so Achilles now needs to cover that extra 10 meters. But while Achilles is covering those 10 meters, the tortoise, bless its persistent little heart, has crawled forward a tiny bit more, perhaps 1 meter. So Achilles now has to cover that 1 meter. But in the time it takes him to do that, the tortoise has moved again, say 10 centimeters. And then Achilles must cover those 10 centimeters, but the tortoise has moved 1 centimeter, and on it goes. Imagine trying to reach a wall by first walking half the distance, then half the remaining distance, then half of that remaining distance. You'd be taking infinitely many steps, getting closer and closer, but would you ever truly touch the wall? See where this is headed? The distance between Achilles and the tortoise keeps shrinking, but it's always divisible. Achilles has to cover an infinite series of smaller and smaller distances to reach the tortoise. And since you can't complete an infinite number of tasks in a finite time, Zeno triumphantly declares, Achilles can never overtake the tortoise. Motion is an illusion. Bam! Another of Zeno's brain twisters, the dichotomy paradox, says that to travel any distance, you first have to travel half that distance. But to travel half that distance, you first have to travel a quarter of it. And to travel a quarter, you need to travel an eighth, and so on, forever and ever. So to even start a journey, you have to complete an infinite number of smaller journeys, which again is impossible. Therefore, you can never even start moving. Now, our everyday experience is screaming that Zeno is totally wrong. We see Achilles types whiz past tortoises all the time, metaphorically, of course. Cars move, planets orbit, we walk from the kitchen to the couch. So, what gives? It's like your GPS insists you're driving in the middle of a lake while you're clearly on a bridge. Your logic and your senses are giving you two different realities. Zeno's paradoxes are a brutal smackdown on our gut feeling about space, time, and infinity. They reveal this disturbing glitch between the world as we see it and the world our logic, when pushed to the absolute limit, seems to describe. For centuries, thinkers wrestled with these arguments. Aristotle tried to sort them out by talking about potential infinity versus actual infinity. It wasn't until calculus came along, with its ideas of limits and convergent series, that math offered a way to show how an infinite series of shrinking numbers can actually add up to a finite sum, kind of like how a smooth curve can be understood as an infinite number of tiny straight segments. So mathematically, Achilles does catch the tortoise. Phew. But the philosophical ouchie still lingers. Zeno's genius was in showing that if you assume space and time can be infinitely chopped up, like a perfectly smooth image, you end up with these bizarre logical dead ends. If, on the other hand, you think space and time are made of tiny, indivisible units, like little pixels of space-time, you hit other equally tricky paradoxes Zeno cooked up, like the arrow paradox. This one argues that an arrow in flight is actually still at any given instant, like a single frame in a movie reel. And since time is made of instants, the arrow is always still. How does it move? These paradoxes force us to question the very nature of how things flow. Is motion smooth and continuous, or is it a series of tiny jumps? What even is an instant in time? If it has no duration, how can a bunch of no-duration instants add up to actual time? If it does have duration, then it's not really an instant, is it? It's like our fundamental experience of movement, a cornerstone of our physical reality, is built on a logical foundation that just crumbles like a Jenga tower if you poke it too hard. Zeno, that clever guy from way back, showed us a profound system error in our attempts to logically pin down the essence of change and flow. The glitch here isn't just in our heads, it's in the apparent clash between our logical tools and the very fabric of continuous existence. So far, we've seen the ship of Theseus mess with our understanding of what it means for something to be itself over time, showing us how fuzzy identity gets in a world that's always changing. Then Zeno's paradoxes came along and took a sledgehammer to our idea of motion, suggesting that simply getting from point A to point B is a logical minefield. Both of these ancient thought experiments attack really fundamental parts of the reality we think we know. One makes us question if objects are ever truly stable. The other makes us question if they can even move or change. It's like discovering the basic nouns and verbs of our world, the things and the actions, the very grammar of existence, don't play by the rules we thought they did. These aren't just quirky puzzles, they're deep, unsettling questions, hinting that there's a major mismatch between our mental blueprints and the universe they're trying to map out. The glitches are stacking up, suggesting that the smooth, logical reality we cruise through every day might be built on surprisingly shaky, maybe even contradictory foundations. What other pillars of our understanding might be just as wobbly? Let's find out. Okay, brace yourselves for this next one, because it takes a swing at something so fundamental, so crucial to all rational thought, that watching it unravel is genuinely a bit terrifying. We're talking about truth itself, and the weapon that brings it crashing down is a deceptively simple sentence, a little linguistic trick known as the liar paradox. The earliest version we know of is often pinned on the Cretan philosopher Epimenides, who supposedly said, "All Cretans are liars." Now, if Epimenides, being a Cretan himself, is telling the truth, then he must be lying because all Cretans are liars, which means his statement is false. But if his statement is false, then Cretans are not all liars, which could mean he is telling the truth. It gets pretty tangled. But the purest, most potent form of the paradox is this tiny, self-referential zinger. This sentence is false. Let's try to dissect this little viper. Assume the sentence, "This sentence is false," is true. If it's true, then what it says must be the case. What it says is that this sentence is false. So if it's true, then it must be false. Whoops, that's a contradiction. Okay, so our first assumption must be wrong. So let's assume the sentence, "This sentence is false," is false. If it's false, then what it says is not the case. What it says is that the sentence is false. So if it's not the case that this sentence is false, then this sentence must be true. Therefore, if it's false, then it must be true. Another contradiction. Our brains. We are stuck in an inescapable logical loop, like a computer program caught in an infinite loop that crashes the system, or a hamster wheel for your mind that just keeps spinning. If it's true, it's false. If it's false, it's true. The sentence completely defies any consistent truth value. It's like a tiny black hole in our language, sucking in our ideas of truth and falsity and crushing them into an undefined mush. This isn't just some clever word game. The liar paradox has massive implications. It shows that our everyday language, the very tool we use to reason and chat, has the seeds of its own destruction built right in, like a piece of software with a secret self-destruct button. It demonstrates that self-reference, a sentence talking about itself, when mixed with negation, saying something is not, can cook up statements that our logical systems just can't cope with. It's like telling a robot, "Disobey this order." What's it supposed to do? For centuries, logicians and philosophers have been wrestling with this beast. Thinkers like Bertrand Russell were so freaked out by these kinds of paradoxes, including his own, Russell's paradox in set theory, which is like asking if a list of all lists that don't list themselves should include itself, that they were driven to build more hardcore, complex systems of logic and type theory just to try and dodge them. These efforts involve creating hierarchies of language, where a statement can't talk about its own truth value on the same level. Kind of like saying a map can't show itself on itself. You need a higher level map. Or developing different kinds of logic that allow for truth value gaps, statements that are neither true nor false, like an unanswerable question, or even truth value gluts, statements that are somehow both true and false, which is a real mind bender. But no solution feels totally satisfying without putting some kind of artificial limit on what we can naturally say. The paradox stubbornly remains a stark reminder of the built-in limits of formal systems when they try to capture all the richness and sometimes the pure treachery of natural language. So what does this mean for reality as a glitch? If truth itself, the very ruler we use to measure our understanding of reality, can be short-circuited by one simple sentence, then how solid is our grip on anything? It suggests that our system for figuring out what's real and what's not has a critical vulnerability, like a major security flaw in our operating system. If language, our main interface with complex thought and sharing ideas, can generate such impossible contradictions, it's like the code of our conceptual reality has a bug that can cause a total system crash under certain conditions. The liar paradox isn't just a puzzle, it's like a giant neon warning sign, flashing brightly over the very idea of absolute, definable truth. It hints that the logical structure we try to impose on the world might not be as tough or as complete as we like to think. Our next mind twister, the Sorites Paradox, also known as the paradox of the heap, kind of sneaks up on you with its seemingly innocent questions, only to completely dismantle your understanding of how we define the world around us. It's an ancient one, possibly cooked up by Eubulides of Miletus, who was a contemporary of Aristotle and known for his paradox-loving ways. He's also linked to a version of the liar. Picture a heap of sand. No doubt about it, it's a heap. Now you take away one single grain of sand. Is it still a heap? Surely, yes. One tiny grain can't be the difference between a heap and a not a heap. You remove another grain. Still a heap? Yep. And another, and another. You keep doing this, grain by single grain. At what exact point does the pile of sand stop being a heap? If you say that taking away the 10,000th grain makes it stop being a heap, then what was so magical about that particular grain? Was 10,000 grains a heap, but 9,999 grains suddenly not a heap? That sounds ridiculous. The logic seems to go, a collection of, say, 1 million grains of sand is definitely a heap. If a collection of n grains of sand is a heap, then a collection of n-1 grains of sand is also a heap, because surely one grain doesn't make that difference. If you buy these 2 points, then by just keep applying that second rule, you can logically prove that even 1 grain of sand is a heap, or 0 grains, which is obviously bonkers, right? Our own logic has backed us into a ridiculous corner, like following a perfectly logical set of driving directions that leads you straight into a lake. The Sorites Paradox shines a massive spotlight on how vague many of our everyday concepts really are. What exactly is a heap? Where's the precise cutoff? The same paradox pops up with tons of other words. When does a person become bald? If you pluck one hair, then another, then another? When does someone count as tall? If they grow 1 millimeter at a time. When does a color stop being red and start being orange as you slowly shift its wavelength? It's like asking when warm water becomes hot water. There's no universal thermostat click. Our language is packed with these fuzzy terms, and we use them just fine all the time. Yet when you put them under this kind of step-by-step logical microscope, they totally fall apart. There seems to be no sharp boundary, no clear line where heapness or baldness or redness begins or ends. Instead, there's just this blurry gray zone, like a smooth gradient in a painting rather than a hard edge. This paradox is deeply unsettling because it suggests that the way we chop up and describe the world is fundamentally imprecise, like trying to measure something with a ruler made of jello. We treat concepts like heap, mountain, adult, or rich as if they're clear-cut, well-defined boxes. But the Sorites Paradox shows they're, at best, useful approximations with really fuzzy edges, like a circle drawn freehand. It serves its purpose but isn't mathematically perfect. The glitch here is the clash between our need for clear definitions, which we need for logic and clear chat, and the inherently smooth, continuous, non-discrete nature of many things in reality. Philosophers have thrown out various solutions. Some say there is an exact cutoff, but we just don't know where it is. That's called epistemicism, like there's a secret number, but we don't have the password. Others suggest using multi-valued logics, where a statement like, "this is a heap," can be neither totally true nor totally false, but somewhere in between, like kinda true, similar to using a dimmer switch for truth instead of just on-off. Still others argue that the meaning of these vague terms depends on the context or how we're using them. Whatever the proposed fix, the Sorites Paradox forces us to face the idea that the building blocks of our descriptive reality aren't as solid as we imagine. If we can't even definitively say what a heap is, how sure can we be about our more complicated descriptions of the world? It's like our conceptual toolkit, our language itself, is trying to force a black and white digital grid onto a world that's all smooth gradients and shades of gray. The paradox reveals the pixelation, the built-in blurriness at the very edges of our understanding. It suggests that many of the objects and categories we see as concrete and distinct are, in fact, more like shifting clouds. Their boundaries impossible to pin down with absolute precision. This vagueness isn't just a linguistic quirk. It's a fundamental feature of how we connect with a complex, continuous world. And it highlights a deep glitch in our attempts to make reality fit into our neat little conceptual boxes. So we've waded through some pretty tricky ancient thought traps. Identity crises with ships, impossible races against tortoises, truth basically self-destructing, and heaps of sand vanishing before our logical eyes. These aren't just intellectual games stuck in old books. These puzzles, born from the minds of thinkers thousands of years ago, still echo through philosophy, linguistics, mathematics, and even cognitive science today. The glitches they show us in our understanding of identity, motion, truth, and definition, well, they're not exactly easy fixes. They stick around because they point to fundamental questions about how our minds, our language, and the nature of reality itself all connect. They remind us that our search for understanding is a work in progress, and that the reality we perceive is often filtered through mental frameworks that are, themselves, imperfect, like looking at the world through slightly smudged or warped glasses. The fact that these paradoxes are still around suggests that these glitches might actually be built-in features, not bugs, of how we think or perhaps of reality itself. Maybe like the charming crackle on an old vinyl record, part of its character. So if your brain's feeling a bit scrambled by now, and if these ancient head-scratchers are making you question the very fabric of your perceptions, let me know in the comments which puzzle so far has tripped your mental circuits the most. Was it the ship of Theseus and its identity drama? Zeno's impossible race? The self-destructing liar? Or the ever-vanishing heap? And if you're enjoying this dive into the cracks of reality, and you want to explore more of these mind-bending ideas, maybe consider subscribing for more existential explorations and philosophical deep dives. We're not done short-circuiting your brain just yet. Our last ancient puzzle for today might look a bit simple at first glance, maybe even like an old-school dad joke or a quirky word trick. But don't be fooled. The Horned Man Paradox, also thought to be from Eubulides, subtly shows how the very structure of our language and the assumptions baked into it can whip up absurdities, creating phantom realities from what's basically grammatical sleight of hand, like a magician using misdirection. The paradox usually goes something like this: what you have not lost, you still have. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? If I haven't lost my keys, I still have them. If I haven't lost my wallet, I still have it. The logic feels pretty sound. Now try applying it to this. Have you lost horns? Most of us, I'm guessing, would answer, no, I've never had horns to lose in the first place. But according to the rule, what you have not lost, you still have. If you have not lost horns, then you still have horns. So congratulations, you logically have horns. The immediate reaction is, that's completely ridiculous. And it is. But why is it ridiculous? And what does its ridiculousness tell us? The Horned Man Paradox plays on the ambiguity of negation and the hidden assumptions tucked away in everyday language. The statement, what you have not lost, you still have, quietly assumes that the thing in question was something you could have had or did have to begin with, like the fine print in a contract that you didn't read closely. When we say I haven't lost my keys, there's an implied context. I own keys, they are possessible by me, and the question of losing them makes sense. However, when we apply this to horns for a human, the context just shatters. We're using a general rule for a specific case where its basic assumptions don't hold up. The phrase lost horns implies you once had them. If you never had them, the idea of losing them doesn't really apply in the same way. This paradox shows how easily language can mislead us if we're not paying close attention to its logical structure and its hidden premises. It's a glitch in the sense that a perfectly innocent-looking rule of language, when applied like a robot programmed to follow instructions literally without any common sense, e.g., if the light is red, drive through it, which could be a disastrous misinterpretation of stop at red light, can lead to a nonsensical conclusion. It shows that our language isn't always this pure, crystal-clear window onto reality. It can also be a tool for building logical fallacies that look valid on the surface. Think about how often we bump into arguments in daily life, in the media, in politics, that rely on similarly sneaky linguistic tricks or unstated false assumptions. The horned man is a simple, ancient example of how a flaw in the code of our phrasing can lead to a runtime error in our reasoning, spitting out a result that just doesn't match up with reality. It teaches us how important it is to be precise with language and to really examine the foundations of any argument, especially those that seem a bit too neat or lead to eyebrow-raising conclusions. It's a reminder that our linguistic tools, as powerful as they are for describing and understanding the world, can also be sources of confusion and can even create imaginary facts if we're not careful. The glitch here is the deceptive power of grammar itself, its ability to make us nod along to a chain of reasoning that, if you look closer, leads us to affirm the existence of things, like our own horns, that are clearly not real. This puzzle really drives home that language, our main tool for dealing with reality, needs a good debugging session now and then. So we've stared down some of history's trickiest mental puzzles, each one cooked up by minds from long ago to trip up our comfy assumptions about the world. We wrestled with the ship of Theseus, making us question what makes a thing itself when everything is always changing, revealing a glitch in our idea of stable identity. We ran an impossible race with Achilles and the tortoise, thanks to Zeno, uncovering a glitch in how we understand motion, space, and infinity. We peeked into the abyss of the liar paradox, where a simple sentence makes truth itself implode, a profound glitch in our systems of logic and language. We watched a heap of sand dissolve grain by grain with the Sorites Paradox, exposing a glitch in the way we define and categorize our world using fuzzy terms. And finally, the horned man playfully tricked us, showing how linguistic structures can conjure up phantom realities, a glitch in the very grammar of our thoughts. What's the pattern here? What are all these different glitches telling us when we put them together? They're telling us that the connection between our minds and whatever reality truly isn't some perfectly smooth, high-definition feed. It's more like a connection that's got lag, packet loss, and weird encoding errors, like a streaming video that keeps buffering and pixelating. Our tools for understanding, our perception, our logic, our language, are incredibly powerful. They let us build civilizations, create art, and figure out many of the universe's secrets. But these ancient puzzles are like critical diagnostic tests, showing us the built-in limits and potential crash points of these very tools. Are these flaws in reality itself, or are they flaws in our mental and linguistic gear for trying to grasp it? Maybe the difference isn't as important as realizing that our experience of reality is always, in some way, a construct, a model. Like an architect's blueprint is a model of a building. The blueprint is crucial for construction, but it's not the building itself, and it can't capture every single nuance of the final structure. And like any model, it can be incomplete or have internal contradictions, especially when you push it to its limits. These paradoxes hang out in those borderline spaces, at the very edge of our understanding, like the static you hear between radio stations. They're not just intellectual curiosities. They are deep philosophical challenges that suggest our perceived world, which we assume is governed by rock-solid logic, might be far more flexible, far more mysterious, and far more glitchy than we usually dare to think. If there's a pattern here, it's one of humility, a call to recognize the profound mystery that still sits at the heart of existence. A mystery that even the greatest minds of antiquity could only start to poke at with these brilliant, brain-busting puzzles. These ancient puzzles aren't a testament to reason failing, but a celebration of its power to question itself, to explore its own boundaries, much like a dedicated scientist who relentlessly tests their own theories. They prove that our perception of everything is indeed built on assumptions that can be, and perhaps should be, challenged. So the next time you hit something that makes your brain feel like it's short-circuiting, don't just brush it off. Lean into that discomfort. That glitch might just be an ancient whisper, inviting you to see the world and your own mind in a new, more wonderfully perplexing light. The reality we live in is one massive, baffling puzzle, and these ancient thinkers handed us some of the most fascinating and delightfully frustrating pieces. What other ancient or modern paradoxes make you question the very nature of reality? Share your favorite brainbusters in the comments below. Let's build a giant list of cognitive conundrums. If this journey through philosophical glitches bent your mind in enjoyable ways, please give this video a like. It really helps the channel explore more of these deep questions. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next voyage into the fascinating, the bewildering, and the utterly brain-busting. Keep questioning everything.